So, as I told you, one of my goals is to be more open about my mental health journey, being depressed and anxious, coming through that, dealing with chronic illness, coming through that. And so I wanted to get your perspective on what it's like to be on the other side. So to be married to someone or in a close relationship with someone who's depressed and anxious, and what your experience is like going through that and coming out the other side. So first, what's it like to be with somebody that's been depressed for as long as you've known them, and in total, over 20 years for me? What's the experience of that?
Well, it's definitely frustrating. There are a lot of ups and downs, and during those years, it was difficult because there wasn't a clear answer. We tried so many different things to help you, and most of those didn't work. You saw a lot of psychiatrists, tried a lot of different medications, therapists. It's a rough ride.
Yeah, I remember, especially in the early years, right? We'd just gotten married, both in our early 20s, and I was already depressed and anxious, already diagnosed with that. And obviously at that time I had a bunch of other physical problems that hadn't been diagnosed yet. And so all we were focusing on was the traditional model, which was therapy and medication. And I remember, I think I saw, at least in the first year we were married, at least 3 different psychiatrists that I can remember. And then shortly thereafter, we moved to California, and I switched insurances, and I remember seeing at least 2 in that first year. And so, it's like we're hitting our heads against the wall, right? Every time you see a new psychiatrist, you're hoping that they have a different or a better answer for you. And so then I get excited, you get excited, hopeful.
Very hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, each time there's a lot of hope. You want someone to just come out and just tell you the answer and say,
Right.
do this, and you're gonna feel better. And it's just not that easy.
Right. We have all these antidepressants, and of course we can try different antidepressants, but it's more complicated than that for most people.
Yeah, there were a lot of medications that you tried that were actually, it made you worse.
Yeah.
In fact, I would probably say that more of the medications either didn't help or made you worse than those that actually did help you.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And even on those medications that did actually prove to help you, there were just so many side effects. I don't recall one that was worth it to the point where it, all the benefits outweighed the side effects.
Yeah. What were things that you knew like there was nothing you could do about it, and at the same time, what were those things that you knew that you could do to help me and support me?
I think for you it was mainly cheering you up, moral support, just making sure that I was there for you when you needed me. There were a lot of times where it didn't matter, what I did, and so it was just kind of hit and miss, trying different things, and hoping that something would kind of trigger better thoughts, better mood, and things would change. And we found things. You love comedy movies, games, puzzles.
Those are still good coping mechanisms for me when I'm feeling tired or overwhelmed. I don't necessarily get that depressed anymore, but I think a lot of times you were more of a voice of reason. When I would say, oh my gosh, everything seems so terrible, you'd be the voice of reason to say, you're right, but this will pass, we're going to try a different doctor, or, we know this goes in cycles and you'll come out of it. Just be a little bit more rooted in reality. I think that's a helpful tip for anyone who loves someone who's depressed and anxious.
Just a reassurance that there are better times ahead, that things will change, and
so having hope.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to someone who is in a close relationship, spouse, family member, to someone who's either chronically depressed, anxious, and or also has chronic physical diseases on top of that?
I think my advice would be just don't give up, that there is hope, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way. it doesn't feel that way for the person that's going through it, and also for the person that's supporting.
Yeah.
But you yourself, you have to maintain hope and then reassure the person that you're supporting that things will get better.
Well, and I think that not everybody is as lucky as I am to have somebody who's patient, caring, supportive, while they're going through this, dark night of the soul and the mental and physical challenges. I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure there must be a higher success rate of people coming through depression and anxiety when they have close family members, loved ones who are supporting them.
I would think that that's a necessary component to getting well.
Yeah, I think so too. I know that at some points I felt either completely hopeless, as if this depression, anxiety, and physical illness is going to go on forever. This is going to be my life. Did you ever feel like that? Like there was no escape from this cycle of illness and mental symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like there are a lot of ups and downs. I feel like there were some things that I could have done better. I could have reached out. If I had advice for someone, I think I would say, reach out to others for support. We kind of, kept it, or at least from my perspective, we kind of kept it on the down low. Nobody wants to broadcast to the world that their spouse is having this deep depression, and so I think I could have used more support. It wasn't until later on in our journey that I kind of figured that out, and if I reached out to family, and that there was a lot of support there. I think if we did share a little bit more, I'm just talking in general, if people shared a little bit more of their feelings, I think we'd find that there are so many other people experiencing the same things, and we could offer each other much more support than we currently do because of those, the stigma. You don't want anyone to know that you've got all these problems, and so everyone kind of sees you from the outside looking and saying, "Oh, they're perfect. They're happy. They're great. Everything's going well."
I think that you've told me before that without feeling true depression and anxiety, a clinical case, it's really difficult to identify with those feelings and those thought patterns. And I think one of the biggest stigmas around is that if you haven't experienced depression or anxiety, you just look at that person that's depressed or anxious and you say, oh, there's something, they have a character flaw or they have a willpower flaw. If they're just in a bad mood and they're just allowing themselves to stay that way. And that's truly not what it is.
Yeah, definitely not the case.
Now that I'm more educated about depression and anxiety, the criteria for being diagnosed with depression is, there's a couple of descriptors, but the one that stands out to me is a feeling of hopelessness for 2 or more weeks. So, I think that's a good measuring stick. If somebody is acting completely uninterested in life for 2 or more weeks, that's a good indication, that they're depressed. And then for me, sleeping was a huge one. That's all I wanted to do. And granted, I had physical problems that were undiagnosed, that were making me more tired. But even from a mental standpoint, sometimes I'd just be like, I just want to go to sleep because I want to escape my feelings.
Yeah,
so
just didn't want to deal with it.
Right. I just couldn't handle life. Yeah. Recently, we had that emotional trauma of losing our little dog, Rio. And I witnessed how depression can creep in. So at first I was very sad and traumatized, of course, by losing her. But in the matter of weeks, that sadness about that one incident and about her turned into sadness and hopelessness and anger about everything. It may be gone for a long time. And I haven't been depressed in probably over 4 years now, but it can creep back in. So keep your eyes open and keep using your skills.
Especially during those, those moments where, the passing of a pet or
for a baby,
for a baby, or or a loved one.
Yeah.
You know,
Anything that's like an emotional challenge, prolonged
right.
stress.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just really grateful that I've been able to come through that on the other side with someone dedicated to me who didn't lose himself and me in the process. And grateful for all the knowledge we've gained together that we can share and inspire others to be more aware and more open about dealing with depression and anxiety and really any chronic illness.
And likewise, I'm grateful that that you continue to push forward and made it through a really hard and dark time in our life together. And grateful that we've learned through that process, and that we were able to come out of it and now have skills to, like we were talking about earlier, to deal with those times when it does creep back up, or if it ever comes up with one of our loved ones or someone else that we care about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.